And we're back. And we're back for our third live show of the day, but second here on the WardyNYM platform. I just finished a 2-hour-long live show covering all Major League Baseball topics regarding this year's deadline, breaking all the news with my good friend there, Kate Maniscalco, that you guys can check out in our live Bleacher Report segment that's still live, ongoing right now in the Bleacher Report app and on their YouTube channel with thousands of you guys watching right now. Thank you so much to everyone that took the time to watch at least portions of that segment, or if not the entire thing with your guy Wardy. I really did appreciate that. Now Trevor May, Wolf Salmon, Lance Brzezowski, and others are all now doing a great job with the BR coverage as that continues on. But we're back here on the WardyNYM platform for a continuation of our Mets trade deadline special, because when I left you guys, Cedric Mullins was not in a Mets uniform. Fast forward a couple hours later, he is. And I'm going to share my initial gut reaction, what I like about this move, what I don't like about this move, what I like and love about David Stearns always done at this year's deadline, what I am disgruntled by with this year's deadline, and ultimately, why did the Mets make the moves that they did versus why didn't they make the moves that they did? What is happening across Major League Baseball that we as Mets fans should be focused on, knowing that contending teams out of the National League are only getting better? That, along with whatever breaking news happens for the next 20-25 minutes up until the deadline at 6 p.m. Eastern, because I'm starting this a couple, I think at least 20 minutes or so beforehand, everybody. So hit that like and subscribe on your way. And thank you guys all so much for your patience and for hopping in right away, guys. We have a big discussion to get into. We got a lot to say in regards to Mr. Cedric Mullins, and we got a lot more to get into on not only how I feel about this club, what I'm a little underwhelmed by, truthfully, and ultimately why the Mets do appear that they're not going to be landing a starting pitcher after all. They have their reasons for it. I'm going to expand as to what they are in a second. Yes, I agree. I wholeheartedly agree that the Mets should go out and land themselves a starter, but there are two main factors as to why that does not appear to be happening at this point in time. I'm going to expand as to why that exactly is with each and every one of you. But thank you guys so much for chiming in. I really do appreciate that. And no, I'm not trying to jinx it, just a reality. I'm not expecting a starter to land in Queens at this rate. If it happens, awesome, but I will be pleasantly surprised. And folks, to everyone that watches this on replay after it's been live, don't be surprised if I chop this up a little bit, because this might be a pretty long live show. I don't know how long we're going to be live in this one, but I think we're going to be live for a while, and I want to break down all the key takeaways with this Cedric Mullins news, how he's going to fit in this lineup, as well as the outfield, what the prospects are that the Mets gave up in turn there for Cedric Mullins. How do I feel about that? And a whole lot more, everybody. So sit back, relax, and get ready for the ride, along with having your comments, questions, and concerns ready in the live chat for me to answer as soon as I possibly can. Cedric Mullins has a 837 OPS over his last 27 games. That's definitely encouraging. I'm not at all upset to see that. And there's one aspect of Cedric Mullins' game that's really important to emphasize. I haven't previously emphasized on the platform that I'm going to do right here, right now, just the next couple minutes. But first, Mark with the $2 holla. Joe Ryan is about to become a Red Sox. Is he actually getting traded to the Red Sox? Are you serious? I know that unfortunately, the Dylan Cease looks like he's on the cusp of being acquired there by the Houston Astros. I had in my Bleacher Report trade deadline predictions today that Cease would get traded to an AL contender. So it looks like that's going to happen, barring changes. Let me start by getting the gut reaction out of the way regarding all the other moves that have happened outside the Mets. I know you guys clicked on this one to watch the Mets, but it's important to understand what other teams are doing across baseball and how this impacts this Mets team, because it's important, everybody. It's very important. And it's so important, as a matter of fact, that yet again, AJ Preller doing what AJ Preller does. AJ Preller does not care about his farm. And the reason why AJ Preller doesn't care about his farm is simply because of the fact that he knows that he's going to be able to churn out these constant top prospects year after year. The Padres have one of the best organizations when looking at not only their scouting, but specifically when we're looking at the IFA pool. They do a great job in getting one of the top heralded prospects there, whether they're from the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, among others, you name it. They do a great job every single year in that regard. So that's why they were willing to bite the bullet and trade away the top 3 prospect in all of baseball in turn for 4+ years of Mason Miller, when they can stretch Miller as a starter in the next couple of years should they wish to do so. And in the meantime, he's one of the best relievers in baseball, flamethrower, touches 104, when they already have the best bullpen in the game. So that's disheartening to see initially as a Mets fan. But you're saying to yourself, okay, all right, the Padres went out and they brought in Mason Miller, and they brought in JP Sears. And the reason why they brought in the Southpaw starter was potentially if they trade away Dylan Cease. And what do we come to find out? Dylan Cease may very well be a Houston Astro if things materialize within the next 20 minutes. It does appear that things are getting close on that front, everybody. I almost guarantee that the Mets would trade Acuna in a trade for Robert, Nathan. Let's understand that context. In a trade for Luis Robert. And Luis Robert now is not even getting traded. And I have a lot to say about that as someone who has been open talking about how much Robert makes sense for this Mets team for the past month and a half plus. I know the Mets felt the same exact way because they went all the way down the line with the White Sox to try to make a trade happen there, but I'm going to expand as to why that didn't happen, why the White Sox are absolute idiots, and everything in between here in just a second, everybody. I want to first thank you guys so much for, again, hitting that like and subscribe on your way in, and give a quick shout out to our amazing sponsors that make today's segment happen, just like every other segment that we have on the platform. And first and foremost, let's start with our awesome friends there at SeatGeek that have you covered for all of your ticketing needs, everybody. Please make sure that you head over to SeatGeek and utilize our promo code WARDY10, link down below in the description, that way you too get 10% off your next ticket purchase. And guys, I'm going to be at Citi Field tomorrow for our first ever official Wardy Day. It's going to be electric. I hope to see you guys there. We only have not even 5 tickets left. I have it in the description down below for you guys to check out if you still want to purchase any. Big day at the ballpark tomorrow with yours truly. We're going to be doing a live show and a big event from the actual ballpark itself, guys, so be on the lookout. But what I love so much about SeatGeek is how you can utilize their grading scale in the app that you just saw beside me a second ago. It has a scale of 1 through 10, red to green, meaning that if you try to purchase a ticket in their app that's more in the red area, 1 through 4, it's not a good bang for your buck and you're probably overspending. If you're in the 7 through 10 range, it's definitely a good bang for your buck. And if it's green, then you absolutely should hammer them. Whether you want to get Mets tickets for the big game tomorrow where Tyler Rogers, Ryan Helsley, and Cedric Mullins are all going to likely be making their Mets debuts that I will see with my very eyes right there in attendance for each and every one of you. Or you guys can obviously simply head over, utilize our promo code WARDY10 for 10% off for Mets tickets, concert show tickets, comedy show tickets, whatever you want on the ticketing front. And thank you guys so much for that, as well as hearing briefly from our amazing sponsor, as well as Moomoo, the official trading platform of the New York Mets. Hey Mets fans, if you love diving deep into the numbers like WAR or ERA, then you absolutely are going to love what today's video sponsor Moomoo brings to your investing game. Think Moneyball, but this time for your portfolio. I'm beyond excited to share that Moomoo, the proud trading platform of the New York Mets, is here to level up your investing. Moomoo is a global trading platform currently serving over 25 million users in markets like the United States, Canada, Singapore, and Japan. Whether you're just starting out or if you're a more seasoned trader, Moomoo's app and desktop platform offers commission-free trading on stocks, ETFs, and options, no contract fees either. So plus, you get premium tools, guys, whether it's going to be the institutional grade analytics, Morningstar research, and analyst ratings, all free for funded users. And right now, Moomoo is doubling down for Mets fans. Sign up through my exclusive link down below, make a qualifying deposit, and get up to, yes, 60 free stocks, plus not 1 but 2 Mets Suite tickets. Not to mention, Moomoo customers can get free tickets to all Monday home games at Citi Field, and who knows, you may even see me at a game. And with 0 commissions and 0 contract fees on stock and ETF options, you keep more of your wins. Are you guys ready to trade smarter? Download Moomoo now and swing for the financial fences. And shout out once more to Moomoo for being an amazing sponsor here on the platform. All right, folks, let's hop right into this one. Let me answer some donations quick, and then I'm going to piggyback off of what I was saying about what's happening around the league, and then specifically here regarding the Mets and the Cedric Mullins acquisition. The Mets used to be a starter heavy, now they're bullpen heavy. That is true, because that's kind of more of the times in today's game. Teams are building super bullpens, especially if they have a rotation that isn't the best in baseball. The way that the Mets rotation is certainly far from the best in the game at the moment. Dave, thank you so much for the $5 holly. He says, Oswald Peraza, yep, I saw him go to the Angels, Willie Castro to the Cubs, and Merrill Kelly to the Rangers. Yep, those moves have happened. The other prominent moves that have happened that we need to emphasize, not just Carlos Correa going back to Houston, which is absolutely insane. We can all agree that's kind of nuts that that's actually happening. But the big news that we need to emphasize is what the Padres continue to do. Listen, Harrison Bader, the Phillies, okay, Mets got Cedric Mullins. It's like 1A, 1B in the sense of, your center field options. When you look at what the what the Padres just did outside of letting Mason Miller and JP Sears, the Padres have without a doubt won this deadline out of the National League, and the Astros on the cusp of winning it out of the American League right now, especially if they do land Dylan Cease or a top reliever that they're actively seeking per the latest reports at the time of us talking right now. Let me go ahead and double check right here. As a matter of fact, yeah, the Royals are acquiring Barely Falter, so that's another move that happened, I guess. Good for Royals, whatever. Going back to this one though, everybody, for the Padres to land not just Ryan O'Hearn, who's a huge bat to add to first base / DH, but to bring in Ramon Laureano when he's batting almost 300 with 40+% above league average as a batter this year. He's hitting close to 900 on the OPS. I mean, Ramon Laureano was a very appealing fit. And you want to know why the Mets did not trade for Ramon Laureano, everybody? It wasn't that they didn't like the bat. They loved the bat, as a matter of fact. It was reaffirmed to me that there are multiple people in Mets brass that liked Ramon Laureano quite a bit. But the reason as to why Laureano's not a Met and he's a Padre has a lot to do with the fact of not only him being packaged in a package deal with O'Hearn for obviously a big haul. Padres give up a lot of pieces there. But it's also the fact that the Mets needed someone someone to help out in center field. And Ramon Laureano has a horrendous outs above average while playing the corner outfield all year long this year. So he's not a reliable option for you to consider in center. You would sacrifice your defense for the upside in offense, but you can't be doing that consistently at center. And we know how much David Stearns is such a sound Pobo when it comes to trying to make sure his defensive configuration is right. So for the Mets, they needed to land a center fielder that actually knew how to competently play center field, if not play it proficiently. Which now brings us to our Cedric Mullins discussion. Breaking news, everybody, Cedric Mullins is a Met. And as you guys can see beside me, there are appealing aspects of Cedric Mullins and his game, no denying that. And let's get into why exactly Cedric Mullins is a nice pickup for the Mets, while also completely agreeing with everybody who wanted Luis Robert, that knows he has a higher ceiling, and is very frustrated that the White Sox simply could not make that deal happen. But let's start here with the Cedric Mullins and the upside, why the Mets brought him in. He's more than the 1.1 WAR player that Nathan is obviously concerned about in the chat. I understand. Here's what we know about Cedric Mullins, everybody. So far this season for Cedi, mind you, veteran lefty bat, used to be a switch hitter, but once he finally committed to only batting from the left side, that's when Mullins had his breakout season that we saw in 2021 with the 30 home runs, 59 RBIs, and he's been fluctuating a lot since then. That was kind of an anomaly of a year for his offensive output. Since then, he's been right around league average as a batter, and he's actually slightly above league average at the time of us talking right now, which is notable considering Luis Robert was over 20% below league average still as a batter. Not that we couldn't see him thrive in a change of scenery, because we all agree that was likely going to be the case, but the reason why Cedric Mullins comes into play is the following. One, he's got 15 home runs, 42 runs scored, 49 RBIs, 14 stolen bases. Obviously, he's a proficient base runner. 229 batting average, 305 on base, 433 slug, which is encouraging because felt like not all that long ago he's below 400 in the slug, and 4% above league average as a player, and now he's up to a 1.2 WAR. So what do I like most about Cedric Mullins? One, over the past 30 games, as it's been relayed, he's been pushing north of an 8. Oh, Dustin May just got traded to the Red Sox. That's a cool trade for the Red Sox. I like that for them, actually, as a matter of fact. We know that the Red Sox need to add something of oomph into the rotation, and Dustin May was a guy that we knew wasn't going to be staying there in LA. Fitting how we go from the Mookie Betts trade for Alex Verdugo, a Bruce Gratterall, all these years later now. They've done a lot of trades with the Dodgers over the years between themselves and the Red Sox, but this is the latest one. Dustin May now, breaking news, everybody, heading the Red Sox. One less thing for the Mets have to worry about, but that goes in direct hand because the Dodgers have so much pitching depth that they can comfortably trade away a guy like Dustin May and lose no sleep over it. But all right, let's get back off that tangent. Let's talk more here on what we need to know. Sandy staying put in Miami, that would be far from shocking should that be the case. We kind of expect that at this point, right? But guys, what do we expect with Cedric Mullins and this pickup? What you're bringing in, and I said this in my Bleacher Report segment live on their YouTube channel and the app for you guys to check out. I even clipped it, as you guys saw. I screen recorded myself as I was talking about it when the news first happened. That's why you didn't hear Kate Maniscalco well in the microphone. Her volume was low because I didn't have it set up where you guys could actually see us like side by side, because I was only recording myself and my software. I wasn't able to actually record the entire segment as it was actively happening on BR's app and they're on their YouTube channel. So I apologize if you weren't really able to hear her, but at the same time, I was just trying to share my initial reaction and put it, get it out there right away. So my expanded thoughts on Cedric Mullins. The reason why the Mets brought him in is obviously you needed certainty at the center field position. Tyrone Taylor's not getting the job done there. We all know this. Tyrone has been a tremendous defender and base runner. We can all agree. But what is also common in the case of Tyrone Taylor is that Buddy has not been able to hit even a beach ball the past 2 months. And you can't have that much of an offensive liability consistently getting reps in center field, because that is not the way for a team trying to win a championship. We all know the Mets have one glaring hole in their lineup. It's the 7 spot. That is the spot where they put their worst batter pretty much all season long. And that's why we've seen Tyrone Taylor in the 7th spot. That's why before he was hitting well, we've seen Brett Beatty in the 7th spot, among others. Now we look fast forward to the current situation with Cedric Mullins. You add Cedric Mullins as your number 7 hitter right now, and this lineup becomes 10 times deeper than what it previously was. So much deeper, as a matter of fact. And the fact that the Mets kept Mark Vientos means that you're going to have potential to see if he can really blossom more at that consistent DH position, as well as getting some reps there in the infield and off the bench. The Mets actually have an abundance of bats when you think about it, because they did not trade anyone away. There was this long belief that they were going to go ahead and trade one of Vientos and Acuna and a deal for Robert. The fact that Robert isn't being dealt is why those both guys are staying here in-house. And I know we saw the nonsense with Adolis Garcia as well. Shout out to Mike DePortez. Listen, I don't know if Mike was hacked or not. I'm not going to give him the benefit of the doubt here just because it's so stereotypical for someone to get reporting wrong and then act like you've been hacked. I mean, Buddy posted a crypto coin shortly after on his account as if, oh, he's hacked clearly, and then he went out to say that he was hacked and all this. I doubt it, if I'm being completely honest. The fact that he even misspelled breaking tells me how urgent it was to get that news out. And I was relayed from my own sources that there was rumblings with Adolis Garcia going on regarding the Mets. It didn't happen. I don't know if we're going to get clarity on that front if it actually is going to happen. But regardless of Adolis Garcia, Mullins is a guy that comes in. He brings you stability in center field, which you absolutely need. He brings a lefty bat in this lineup, which doesn't hurt, knowing that Jesse Winker, surprise, surprise, isn't returning anytime soon. On the same day that the Mets officially acquired Cedric Mullins from the Baltimore Orioles is the same day that the Mets announced that Jesse Winker has been placed on the 60-day injured list, meaning the earliest he can return is September. I'm sorry to break this, guys, but if we get any production out of Jesse Winker before the year ends, we'll be blessed with that. Same applies with Jose Siri. Both these guys, unfortunately, have boxed themselves unintentionally out of this Mets team because they can't stay on the field. And you need to make sure that the most important ability here is availability. And that's where Cedric Mullins falls in great category. He's been rock solid. He had 147 games last year. He's at 91 so far this year. He had 116 the year before that, 156 the year before that, 159 the year before that. So Mullins has been a gamer, has been able to give you those daily reps. And not only is that appealing as an upgrade over Tyrone Taylor and a bat there that can be utilized in not only center field, but at times at DH, batting from the left side. Speaking of the left side, this is what I like a lot about Cedric Mullins, far more than I initially realized, because I will shamelessly say, I did not look at Cedric Mullins' batting splits when I broke him down previously. I just looked at, obviously, his baseline numbers, his expected numbers for Fangraphs, everything in between there. Dave with the $5 haul. Thank you so much for that, Dave. He says, and new Heart of Reds falter to Royals, and Alcantara will not be dealt before the deadline ends. That's what we're hearing. Not shocked at all to see that, sadly. So, Cedric Mullins has reverse splits, which is really important, because what was the most appealing aspect behind Luis Robert outside of him being a clear bounce back candidate? It was that, one, Robert has hit very well the past month, as has been the case with Cedric Mullins. They've actually both been hitting the ball really well over their past north of 30 games. Then you add in the fact that Luis Robert, his OPS against left-handed pitching this year is 966. Well, folks, Cedric Mullins ain't that far behind. He's at an 886 OPS, and he's batting north of 300 against southpaw pitching this year. To get another lefty killer in this Mets lineup is vital, because left-handed pitching, yet again, has been the Mets' demise so far this year. Yanks got Caballero. Oh, that's okay. That's not much of a Yanks. That's not really much of a needle mover, is it? What did the Yankees do? Yankees. Oh, hold on. Oh, but the Padres just got Nestor Cortez, everybody. The Padres just got Nestor Cortez, which leads me to believe that Dylan Cease is going to get traded to the Astros right at the buzzer beater here. And Phil Maton, former Mets legend, just got traded to the Texas Rangers. So the Rangers have officially acquired, oh my God, Adrian Hauser just got traded to the Rays. It's a flurry, everybody. It is a flurry right now. With the deadline literally up in 5 minutes, it's trade. That's what's happening right now. Taylor Rogers, who, mind you, the twin brother of Tyler, who the Mets just acquired yesterday, has already been flipped from the Pittsburgh Pirates to the Chicago Cubs. So he's staying there in the NL Central, but this time he's going to the Cubs. Sandy Alcantara is not going to be traded, everybody. And the Marlins are idiots. I'm going to expand more on why the Marlins are idiots in a second. I have some wordy sources to share. I can say in confidence what the Marlins were asking to a degree for Sandy Alcantara. And when I tell you guys what the asking price is, you're going to say to yourself, that makes sense why we didn't get Sandy Alcantara. And before I get to that point, because I have a lot to say on that front in just a second, let me go back to the top here and break down more on Cedric Mullins. The ability for Mullins to dominate as well as he does against left-hand pitching adds a new dimension to this lineup, because now the Mets don't need to put themselves in a position where they're completely stubborn on, say, having, for example, Starling Marte, if they did not say want Marte in the lineup that day, to force him in there because he does lefties well when Cedric Mullins is fantastic. So if you want to have a game where you have Cedric Mullins at DH, and then you say have either Tyrone Taylor in center or McNeil in center, and then if McNeil's in center, then you'd likely then have Brett Beatty at second, and at third, you're going to have Vientos, or you're going to have Mauricio, Or you could go with a different configuration, right? You could have Vientos at the DH spot. You could have Ronnie at third, Beatty at second, and then you could have Mullins in center. You could have McNeil at second, Mauricio at third, if not Beatty, as well as having Mullins in center. There are so many different configurations the Mets can go about their lineup should they wish to do so now, and their defensive configuration, which is why this is so appealing to bring in someone like Mullins. Then you add in the fact that at least Cedric has the track record of being a rock-solid player in Major League Baseball, being right around a league average center fielder. And listen, this is what the Mets needed. What did the Phillies just get in Harrison Bader? They just got, again, right around a league average guy. He's batting slightly above league average this year, Bader. I'm sure he's going to torch the Mets when we play him because he did the exact same thing when we played him in Minneapolis earlier this year. He helped single-handedly win that series against us, which was frustrating. But the reason as to why the Mets made this move for Cedric Mullins had so much to do with the fact that they were boxed out from the White Sox and Luis Robert. So when you look at the depth of this Mets lineup right now, it's pretty darn good, guys. I mean, I'm going to actually go ahead and tell you right now more of my thoughts here on Mullins, because when I look at the configuration for them, I look at this Mets lineup out of the National League, and I think they're easily one of the better ones in baseball. But the problem that I have here is not so much on the depth of the Mets lineup as it is about putting it together, right? The Mets have had this continued issue with regards to scoring position. Why am I supposed to believe that's going to just miraculously change here post-trade deadline? They're going to have to go out there and actually prove it. Otherwise, it's wishful thinking at this very moment. But I do want to see here just on the lineup configuration for a second, everybody. Let me see if I can go ahead and pull this up, because there are appealing things here. But if you say have the Mets lineup as follows, if you're going to have Nimmo 1, Lindor 2, and let me get back focused here for a second, everybody. If you're going to have Lindor 1, if you're going to then have 2, that being in, Nimmo 1, Lindor 2, Soto 3, Alonso 4th, 5th, you can have McNeil. 6th can be Marte or Vientos. 7th can be Cedric Mullins. Then 8th, then you can have Brett Beatty. 9th, you could have there in Francisco Alvarez. Like there's various ways to go about it. You can have Mauricio in the lineup over Beatty as well. I love the fact that the Mets have an abundance of options to choose from. You much rather have options if you're the Mets versus have none. And unfortunately, though, the player that the Mets wanted far and away the most, and we all know this, was Luis Robert. That's why I talked about Luis Robert endlessly for the past month. It's not just because I felt really confident the Mets landing him. The reason why I felt so confident is because I was relayed constantly from my same sources, my same people in the industry who had Mason Miller to the Padres last night, well before it was even happening and it fully got materialized. The same people have relayed information to me that Cedric Mullins is pretty much a lock to be a Met today that I couldn't even say publicly yet before we even found out the status of Luis Robert. There are various other instances in which I've been relayed information, including Dylan Cease, including Stephen Kwan rumors, including so many other things that have been happening, and I can't go public with them until it actually happens. So let me expand now as to why the Mets did not land Luis Robert, because you guys saw it. If you didn't, let me enlighten you. The White Sox are idiots, and so are the Marlins. What do they have in common? Two front offices that have absolutely no effing clue what they're doing. But starting with Chicago, everybody, it begins as follows. The White Sox were asking for Joe Nathan. I want you guys to just let that marinate for a second. The White Sox asked for Joe Nathan. And I understand you got to shoot for the stars when you're a team trying to maximize the trade value of a player, but they had been smoking that good that's beyond our amazing sponsor on the platform and in the cloud. I mean, this had to have been well beyond that to really have them going delirious or something, because what makes you think in the right effing mind that Luis Robert, who has been 20 to 30+% below league average the past 2 seasons collectively, and the Mets are going to give up not only any pitching prospect, but arguably the best in the sport currently. The best in the sport. What makes you think that David Stearns, at all in his right mind, should make that move? There's not a single Mets fan that would be in favor of that trade. If that trade happened, everyone would be saying how David Stearns needs to be fired yesterday, okay? So when you understand the context of just how idiotic this White Sox front office is and what they were asking, they were not budging off of the Mets' top pitching prospects. They would not get off. And the problem is, when you ain't getting off, the Mets can only wait so long. When you have a 6 p.m. deadline, you're not going to allow these negotiations to drag out for an absurd amount of time. You're going to do it for as long as you feel comfortable doing. And the Mets had to make sure that they pivoted at some point. Doval to the Yankees? Oh my God. Yankees are building a super bullpen just like the Mets. That's actually insane. No way. Is that true? Oh my God. Super bullpen. Oh my goodness gracious. Hold on, guys. Mets just shook hands with the Yankees as building a Super Bowl. Are you kidding me? Wow. All right, guys. There you go. Right at the buzzer. Right at 6 p.m. Doval goes to the Yankees. That's crazy. That doesn't bother me at all. We really don't have room for a guy like Doval, obviously. You brought in Helsley. You brought in Rogers. You brought in, obviously, Gregory Soto. You already have Edwin Diaz. You already have Brooks Raley. You already have Reed Garrett. You already have Ryan Stanek. I love the Mets bullpen. I have no complaints on the Mets bullpen, okay? The only unfortunate thing is that the Mets bullpen isn't even rated best in baseball because the Padres, after having arguably the best bullpen in baseball, went out and said, you know what? Let's go ahead and add Mason Miller just because they want to piss off your guy Wardy here. So, reeling back in on Luis Robert, they're smoking that good. They're smoking that something that just makes no sense which way, shape, or form. So, the White Sox are going to settle with keeping Luis Robert, seeing how he does in the second half, when, mind you, a key factor into why Luis Robert has played really good baseball the past month. Thank you so much for the donation, Dave. Yep, I saw Jose Caballero is going to the Yankees. Yep, I'm aware of that. Thank you so much. That's a smaller move for them. What I need to make clear here, though, Jack's the Rays? No way. Oh, my God. No way. Sorry, guys. This is all happening because we're just past the deadline. Is Griffin Jax actually going to the Rays? That would be insane. Yep, guys, the Mets deadline is complete. Ryan Helsley, Tyler Rogers, Gregory Soto, and Cedric Mullins. That is officially official. Oh my God, the Blue Jays are getting Varland from the Twins. Wow, a lot of buzzer beaters right now. Wow. Okay. That's crazy. Sorry, guys. We're just all live reacting to this right now. I know my replay viewers aren't going to love this as much. I apologize. Jax to the Rays? Charlie Moore and the Tigers, I don't care about that. That's okay. Good. I guess he's farther away from playing the Mets. But Griffin Jax to the Rays is actually insane. The Rays churn out pitching like it's nothing. Why do they need Jax? Griffin Jax was one of my favorite relievers available. What made Griffin Jax so appealing was that he still has club control until 2028, but he has like a 14K per 9. He's insane. He's literally like unhittable when he's right. And his numbers are fantastic. I like Griffin Jax a lot. That's a great pickup for the Rays, but it's like, what are the Rays doing here? You know, they're going all in clearly. Maybe is a separate reliever from the Rays getting traded? Is that possible? I'm not exactly sure. I guess we'll find out. Griffin Jax, so that's a buzzer beater trade. I actually love that for Tampa. Good for them. All right, getting back to what I was saying, everybody, because this is important. We know about the Luis Robert situation. The Mets weren't doing it, right? It's been a day for sure, John. It's far from done. I have not been taking care of myself nearly as well as I should, but I appreciate the concern. I'm glad you guys are looking out for me. Thank you kindly for that. I'm feeling okay right now, though. Surprisingly, I feel a lot better than you think I would for someone who's been now live for 4 hours at least, and we're not stopping anytime soon right now. I'll just cut things off for people on replay, so it's not like a 2+ hour long live show is what this one will probably be. But as we get back in, Luis Robert, he's not coming to the Mets, and clearly they weren't budging with anyone, right? The Phillies pivoted, that's why they went to Harrison Bader. The Padres pivoted, that's why they went to Ramon Laureano, and then in that package deal, obviously, there to get their left fielder along with Mr. Ryan O'Hearn. That's why Robert wasn't dealt. But now the same Chicago White Sox, the idiots that they are, instead of looking at Luis Robert finally heating up the past month when it goes in direct hand with the simple fact that he's trying to get traded because he wants nothing to do to be on that sorry-ass team, instead, they don't trade him, and now we're going to have the remainder of the season for Robert in a White Sox uniform. And then on top of it all, the White Sox are going to pick up his $20 million option because there's not a chance in heck that they allow him to walk for nothing. So now you're going to pick up a $20 million option on a player that has been statistically 20% below league average for 2 consecutive seasons. And you're going to head into next season with a lineup that is not going to be all that much better than what it is right now. And honestly might be worse given how stupid and idiotic that White Sox front office is. Bearing that in mind, there's a great reality that this time next year, we're going to see Luis Robert there right back at the trade deadline. And then they're going to have shot themselves in the foot. Because if you get a third consecutive year where Robert doesn't consistently play well, and what makes you think he's going to consistently do that now, I promise you he heated up in direct hand because he was hoping to get traded. The fact that didn't happen, don't be surprised if you see Robert put up underwhelming numbers the rest of the year. And don't be surprised if you see Robert not play all that great next season. And then you wonder and say to yourself as a White Sox fan and their front office, maybe we made a mistake by holding on to a guy and actually completely deplete his value. Now he has a $20 million contract that very little teams are going to want anything to do with. It's idiotic, it's stupidity, i.e. what we have here in the very much, yes, Chicago White Sox. How I would grade this Mets deadline, I'm going to get to that. Actually, I'll get to that right now. Given the fact that the Mets bolster their bullpen big time, added to an area of need, the only thing the Mets did not do that I wish that the Mets would have done is obviously go ahead and actually land themselves a Steven Kwan is staying in Cleveland. Dylan Cease is not getting traded, at least to the Houston Astros. So it appears the Padres are fully all in. Ty France and Varland are going from the Twins, everybody, to the Blue Jays. So you got that going as well. A lot of moving parts at the moment as the trade line just concluded. I'm going to go with the grade for the Mets, given the fact that they added to an area of need that they desperately needed to. They bolstered their bullpen. All they needed to do was add a starter, and they didn't do that. And understanding the reasons as to why they didn't add a starter is why I'm going to be giving the Mets a B on their deadline grade. I'm going to give them a B, B- in that area. Not going A, obviously, because this would have been a slam dunk of an A grade if they obviously landed a quality starter. They didn't do that. If the Mets landed a quality starter, this is all you could ask for at the deadline, regardless of the fact on shit that we, pardon my French, that we see. Oh my God, Taj Bradley is going the other way in that trade for Griffin Jax. That's insane, guys. Taj Bradley, who we had some thoughts could be dealt by the Tampa Bay Rays, now has been dealt. He's the corresponding move there heading to Minnesota. Very interesting, because the Rays don't need Taj Bradley, clearly. They're going to be completely content with him not in their rotation. They're going to utilize one of their rotation spots probably as a full bullpen game like they typically do. And Griffin Jax is going to go out and strike out guys at roughly a 20K per nine, because if he's doing 14 with the Twins, I can only imagine what he's going to do in that pitching lab there for the Tampa Bay Rays. So yeah, very happy for Rays and their fans. I thought that was good. I'm giving the Mets a solid B right around there for their trade deadline grade. I thought the Mets did a very good job in upgrading. They're clearly a better team than they were 48 hours ago. There's no denying that. This is also, I would say, I think we could all agree, the best trade deadline that the Mets have had under Steve Cohen. Think about it for a second, everybody. Before I talk about why the Marlins are incompetent and did not trade guys like Sandy Alcantara and Edward Cabrera, let's also not forget that in year one under I apologize, Steve Cohen. What happened? The Mets acquired Javi Baez and Trevor Williams for Pete Armstrong and other pieces. PCA is now the face of the Chicago Cubs, and we saw Javi Baez with his thumbs down. Hilariously enough, as much as people don't like Baez, he was the best offensive acquisition the Mets have made at a deadline outside of Yoenis Cespedes over the past decade. That's not an exaggeration. Buddy batted right around 300, was pushing right around north of a 900 OPS, and he was really good in his limited sample size. He actually put up his best offensive numbers in that stretch in a multi-year span that he wouldn't do again until we saw literally this season, now that he's being utilized as an outfielder by the Tigers. So El Mago, if he came back to the Mets, I think it's a bit of a different story. The Mets offered, actually, Billy Epler offered El Mago but El Mago, which is a nickname for Javi Baez, they offered literally 4 years, $120 million contract. That is what Billy Epler had on the table there for Javi Baez. Javi Baez, however, got offered an 8-year contract of, more money. So he took the contract there. And what he also did was not only did he sign with the Tigers, but he went on to play so poor the next 2 seasons that he initially signed with the Tigers because he liked the structure of the contract. He had an opt-out after his first 2 years with Detroit. He decided to say no to that, and he stayed in Detroit because Buddy wasn't going to get nearly the dollars that he'd otherwise be making because he was playing so bad. This is the first year since landing in Detroit that Javi Baez is actually playing at all up to his contract. And point I'm trying to make here is that was the biggest splash that we've seen the Mets do at a deadline under Cohen. And even then, it's a trade that in hindsight, every Mets fan wishes that the Mets didn't do. Especially when you bear in mind the Mets were really trying to get Chris Bryant and Wilson Contreras and other deals. And that was pretty much it. They wanted to make a splash to that degree. Zach Scott, who was speaking on SNY earlier, he wanted to try to make that kind of trade happen, and it just didn't. So that is year one under Steve Cohen. You trade away a top prospect who's now thriving for the Chicago Cubs, as deemed as one of the best outfielders in all the game today. You guys, could you imagine if PCA was in the center field right now, where the Mets would be? They would be perfectly well-rounded. I mean, there would be little to no complaints. That's how good they would be. Then we get to 2022. What do the Mets do at the 2022 trade deadline? Well, in the build-up, they land Daniel Vogelbach, they land Tyler Naquin, they land Darren effing Ruff, and they also land Michael Givens. What is the commonality with all the 4 players that I just listed, each and every one of you? Oh yeah, none of them are in Major League Baseball anymore. And none of them were in Major League Baseball beyond a year and a half from the point of them being acquired by the Mets. All of them had additional production for the Mets, with the exception of Michael Givens, because he was batting practice. I actually saw his debut live in D.C. as it was happening. The Mets were winning by a lot. They brought him in, and it was batting practice, and they kept letting him get cooked. They just hung him out to dry for way too long. Buck just didn't care at the time. And Givens was not ideal for your bullpen. Darren Ruff fell off a cliff pretty much right away. Daniel Vogelbach had a red-hot first month with the Mets because we were all rallying around the fact that this guy was massive, a guy that you do not see in baseball too often, like Bartolo Colon trying to hit home runs for you, and then not taking the bat off his shoulders, where you could intimidate, you could try to be Daniel Vogelbach in a fun little video by just standing at the box and taking 3 pitches down the pipe, and that was a reality. Tyler Naquin couldn't hit a fastball if it was thrown right by him, which it constantly was, and that was the Mets' demise in 2022. They didn't do nearly enough, and it came back to bite them square, and the you-know-what, down the stretch as he lost first to the Braves and then obviously squandered their opportunity in the wild card to the Padres. Then we get to 2023. What do the Mets do in 2023? They're selling big time, right? They completely fall flat on their face in the first half of the year. Between injuries and inconsistencies, they just were not the team they were hoping to be. No, Pat can stay in the chat. We love Pat. Pat says the Yankees have the best bullpen in MLB history. Pat's excited because the Yankees finally bolstered their bullpen, which is usually their strength, but they couldn't even develop proper pitching out there this year, so they were desperate to have to do trades otherwise. The Yankees bullpen is definitely one of the better ones out of the American League. I wouldn't say it's as good as the Mets, though. I stand firm on that. I like their bullpen a lot. I think the Mets go toe-to-toe with them every single day of the week. I think the Padres bullpen is better than everybody's here, so I don't know why we got to play these games. But Pat, thank you for the donation. Can't wait to see you at Wardy Day tomorrow. For those that don't know, yes, Pat will be at Wardy Day tomorrow, so make sure you guys are on the lookout for that. Tickets are still available. Click the link in the top of the chat for you guys should you have interest, and thank you guys kindly for that. The starting pitching market must have been extremely expensive. Hardly any real good starting got moved. I agree with your trade deadline. Great. Thank you, Juan Papa. I appreciate that a lot. Thank you so much for that $5 holla. And speaking of the pitching, we're going to expand more on that is second. Got Gangster with the $5 holla. Thank you, my man. Wish we got a starter, but great trade deadline by the Mets. I agree. It was a very good deadline regardless, but we all would have loved a starter, obviously. So to go off of what I was saying here, what was I saying last? Oh, you hate when you go blank. Can someone remind me? You guys can do a good job reminding me. What was I discussing right before I started to answer the donations in the chat? I know one of you guys has to know. We got 1,500 people watching. There's got to be at least one with better short-term memory than yours truly here. $5 holla says, really, Ramos? Hate that, but I'm satisfied with the rest. Yeah, Ramos was the only one that, if I'm being honest, I actually kind of was a little bit more bummed by trading Anthony Nunez than Ramos. I'll get to that. Sandy, what were we talking about? 2023 trade deadline. Thank you guys so much. Love you guys to death. All right, so we're talking about 2023 and how the Mets found themselves selling, right? And the only one that calls this a horrible deadline are the same fair weather Mets fans. I can't comprehend the fact that we now have one of, if not the best bullpen in baseball. Like, can we appreciate when the Mets actually make good moves? I understand being disappointed that they didn't make a move that you wanted them to make, but it wasn't for lack of effort. And that's something that I think is really important to reiterate. 2023, the Mets trade away Justin Verlander, Max Scherzer. They acquired Luisangel Acuna, Drew Gilbert, and Ryan Clifford. Since then, Ryan Clifford's doing well in the minors. Drew Gilbert is now a part of the San Francisco Giants organization, as he was a corresponding move along with Jose Budo there. We saw, as well as Blake Tidwell for the rental, and Tyler Rogers, a submarine stud, who I'm so excited to see pitch against his former team tomorrow in person. I'm really excited to say that. But then we get to 2024. And in 2024, what did the Mets do at the deadline? Very underwhelming. And the reason why they were underwhelming is because the Mets went from being 11 games below 500. Mike Yastrzemski just got traded, by the way, to the Royals 14 minutes after the deadline. Mike Yastrzemski from the Giants. Again, Giants are doing a bit of a soft sell here. They just traded Yaz away. So I don't know what they're getting in return. So Royals get themselves Mike Yastrzemski, get a little bat, and then we go on from there. Varland and France to the Blue Jays. Cease not traded to the Astros. I saw. Thank you so much for that donation, Dave. As always, I appreciate that. So the point here is that we get to 2024, and what happens at the 2024 deadline? The Mets acquire, leading up to it, Phil Maton, Ryan Stanek. Two guys that would be pretty good for them in the season, but obviously didn't do anything for them come postseason play. Stanek was electric in postseason, but Maton was batting practice, which goes in hand as to why the Mets didn't bring him back after the season. Then you look at the offense. The Mets brought in Jesse Winker, who we all liked as a trade deadline acquisition for the Mets. We can all agree the Winker acquisition last year was fun. We enjoyed that. He was awesome down the stretch heading in postseason play, and he was really good in his at-bats when he was playing in the playoffs for the Mets. Then outside of Jesse Winker And outside of those relievers that you acquired in the buildup, you acquired Paul Blackburn, who the Mets tried desperately to trade away because they have no room for Paul Blackburn right now. That's why he's being stored in the minor leagues at the moment. And Huascar Brosban, who's just been sent down by the Mets 48 hours ago because Buddy did not look good in his latest outing there, and the Mets need bullpen room, and he has a minor league option left. So when you look at last year's deadline, it's a whole lot of nothing in retrospect. None of those guys are actively impacting the Mets at the time of us talking right now, especially with Brosban having been sent down. So what was the expectation heading into this year's deadline? The expectation heading in the deadline was that the Mets would go out and that they would add. They're all in, but the great question is to what degree. And between Cedric Mullins and the bullpen, those are all great moves. But now let's get to why you guys have been asking. Why didn't the Mets make a trade for Sandy Alcantara, Edward Cabrera? We're going to expand on that here in a second. Blackout Night tomorrow should have, it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of fun, Blindbeard. Make sure that you have your everything secured. I will be sending everybody their tickets to Wardy Day before the end of the day, I promise. The only reason why I didn't get a chance to yet today was solely because of the fact that I've been busy the entire day doing this MLB traded line coverage for each and every one of you. But tomorrow, not tomorrow, later on today, I will be sending everyone transferring over your tickets via email. So as long as you guys send me the proper email, you will get your ticket. If you guys have any issue tomorrow, please make sure to reach out to me early in the AM through the email that I've been connecting with you guys with. Otherwise, you kind of poop out of luck in the sense that you weren't paying attention. So be on the lookout. I will be sending your tickets later on today, guys. But to talk about Sandy, let's talk about Sandy Alcantara and why this didn't happen. Now, what I can tell you in confidence is that the Mets were close, relatively close to landing Sandy. The farthest I heard relayed is that the Mets got to the 65-70% area with Sandy Alcantara. And this was being relayed to me going back a couple days ago. And this was legit. The sources I was relaying this are the same sources that were on the money about stuff before even Passan was breaking it today. So I know for certain that it was good. And it's good to hear that. But why didn't the Mets trade for Sandy? I was told yet again that even with Sandy Alcantara, Zach Gallen staying in Arizona is a crime. Poor son of a gun. I'll see you in the offseason, Zach. We'll see you on the Mets for 2026, right? But all jokes aside, Sandy Alcantara, the Marlins ask, Jonathan. Again, everyone wants Jonathan. Everyone wants the Mets' top pitching prospect. And even in a trade for Edward Cabrera that I think you could stomach, trade one of your top prospects away, the Mets clearly were not comfortable going there. And you want to know why the Mets were not comfortable going there to trade away one of their top prospects? Because you can clearly tell that the Mets have a level of comfortability with one of those arms to impact them for the better. That is why. That is exactly why the Mets did not make any moves for a starter. It wasn't for a lack of effort. We talked for the past month and a half how they were heavily in on Mitch Keller. We talked plenty about Sandy, plenty about Edward, plenty about Kelly, plenty about Gallen. We went no stone unturned. That was the case of this Mets front office. But what is also true is that when you have idiotic organizations trying to maximize trade value so much so that they want literally the creme de la creme, like not just any prospect, but like arguably the best pitching prospect in the game, that's a really hard pill to swallow if you're the Mets. Knowing that Jonathan is major league ready, if not right now, then as soon as next season. I think we can all agree between himself, Sproat, and McLean, these guys are all fringe MLB players at the time of us talking right now. So if you have a three-headed monster of a prospect trio that all have major league caliber upside, why not consider them at the major league level? And what's been since reaffirmed through Andy Martino of SNY that he spoke on earlier today, among others, is that knowing that the Mets did not acquire a starter, do not be surprised when they inevitably call up Noel McLean or someone else. I think it's McLean's job to lose to be given this opportunity first. Nolan has done something better than Brandon Sproat. And what has Noel McLean done? McLean has been a more consistent starter at AAA since he's been called up to AAA than what Sproat has done. Sproat's been awesome the past month and a half. And I won't be surprised if we see him at some point. And the only schmuck calling in here saying Fire Stearns are the same idiots that probably want the Wilpons back. I mean, maybe get with the times. You know, you're off by like at least 5-6 years now. You'll get through though, I promise you. P-brain. That's all I have to say about that, truthfully. As we continue on, though, everybody, point I'm trying to make here is that, and again, I'm losing that my train of thought, the prospects. If Noel McLean's given an opportunity, he may very well run with it. And if he doesn't do well, the Mets have other kids to consider right now. So whether it's McLean, whether it's Sproat, or whether it's Ton, the Mets are destined to call one of these kids up now. It's going to happen because the Mets waited too long. And this is where I have my one gripe. This is the one gripe. Are you guys ready for this? Let me tell you. The Mets had a month and a half. A month and a effing half. And you guys know this very well if you follow the platform. I beat the drum plenty. You know how many Big Mets updates videos I dropped in the AM saying Noel McLean call up close? Brandon Sproat? Could he be considered soon? Jonathan, could he be considered soon? We have beat this drum for the past 2 effing months, and this is where I have a problem with David Stearns. This is my one big gripe, and I hope David sees and hears this. Why in God's name did you not consider one of these arms when they were clearly thriving, especially Noah McLean, clearly thriving when you had Minaya out, Saga out, everybody and their mother injured in this rotation for a month plus? You had a key opportunity to allow one of these kids to get some runway, give them a couple weeks in the rotation, regardless of how bad or good they look. This is the time to do so. And instead of going out of their way to give one of the kids an opportunity before you got to the trade deadline, they're now going to sit and find themselves in a position where they're going to call up a kid after the deadline. What is the problem with calling up one of the young arms now? The problem with calling up one of the young arms now is that if they do not perform well, and if you say face any injury woes to your rotation from now up until the end of the season, you have a major problem. You cannot have an external option. Why? Because the trade deadline just ended. This was prime time for this Mets team to give one of these kids a leash to see what they had, if not consider someone else maybe after a week or two if they really wanted to, and they did nothing of the sort. I hate that. That is my biggest gripe that I have with the Mets out of all their evaluation. And they will tell you that the reason why they did not call up the kids is because Ton hasn't even touched a AAA level. They want him to get more seasoning. Brandon Sproat really hasn't been good at the AAA level up until the past month and a half. Noel McLean's good, but they need to see a larger sample size. I understand that. But when push comes to shove, you need to make a decision. And the Mets sitting on their hands when they absolutely could have utilized one of these key young starters instead of this nonsensical, oh, Blade Tittle gets called up, gives up 4 runs in 2 innings, he's out of here. Oh, Justin Hageman gets called up. Oh, he gets rocked, he's out of here. Like, all those opportunities that they had to put themselves in a position to actually consider one of their young arms, they did not do it. So that is where I have my largest frustration. That is my only frustration, if I'm being completely honest, when it comes to what David Stearns did versus didn't do here. Let's see, going up the list here just for a second. Stearns said in an interview that he didn't want to call them up to avoid deflating their confidence if they didn't perform. But I'm sorry, but that's not good enough. That's not good enough when you're in a win now stage. That's not good enough when you had a month plus to give them a leash. It wasn't like, oh, we're just going to call them up for a spot start. They wouldn't have a rotation spot. Holmes has completely unraveled the past month and a half that we've all seen with our very eyes. Buddy can't go beyond 5 innings to save his life. What makes you think, if you're the Mets, if you're David Stearns, if you're this Mets front office, that you really couldn't have considered one of those young arms sooner? Because now you face the very unfortunate situation that if, say, hey, you call up one of these young kids, here's the thing. You not calling up one of those young kids a month ago is no different than why you would be calling them up now. The counter of, oh, you didn't want to hurt their confidence. What if you call up Noah McLean this next week and Buddy gets rocked in his first outing? You think that's going to help his confidence? What if you call up Brandon Sproat or Jonathan and they become batting practice right away? Of course, it's not going to instill confidence in them, but the difference is that you at least had ample time to go out and try to, even if you had to spend a premium, to go and land a quality starter that was available by this year's deadline. And instead, the Mets sat on their hands. They knew that the asking prices were absurd, and I completely understand where they're coming from, but in not allow a leash to these young players is what I have my biggest gripe with. This is what can come back to bite them in the ass. If there's one thing that you can look at and say, uh-oh, they should have done this sooner, or you know what, they really should have had an arm at the deadline, this is what we will be referencing. That is the only gripe that I have when it comes to what the Mets maybe didn't do enough of, because I don't know what the asking prices were from the Arizona Diamondbacks for Merrill Kelly and Zach Gallen, but I'd have to imagine that you could have swung one of those trades without trading away your top pitching prospect, mainly because the Diamondbacks have had such an underwhelming deadline. In my opinion, they lost their trade on Josh Naylor. They definitely lost their trade on Eugenio Suarez. Imagine having the best bat at the deadline and getting the return that they got. I think the Mariners absolutely swindled them, as a matter of fact. So that is where I have my gripe. That is the one thing I can say confidently that bothers me. Outside that, I love what the Mets did with this bullpen. I love the certainty that they added in center field. I love the fact that Cedric Mullins rakes against lefties. Cedric Mullins against righties, however, can't forget that, is batting just over 200, with an OPS not nearly as strong as 886 against left-handed pitching. So KCB with the $5 Hall states the following: inexcusable we don't get starting pitching depth. Stearns is balancing this year on the elbow and hamstring of Minaya Saga. We left the deadline with Monta. Yeah, I agree with you. I 100% agree with you, because we are bearing in mind that if the Mets face one significant injury to this rotation, they have a problem. You know, like it's that quick. One significant injury and Paul Blackburn's in the rotation, right? Two problems, and you're forcing a prospect into this role, which is supposedly what you guys so desperately did not want to do the past 2 months. But now you are forced to do that. God forbid if something happens. I agree. I think the Mets are banking way too much on certainty with their in-house options. And that's why they're not getting an A grade at this deadline. They're getting a solid B. I'm not at all upset with the deadline as a whole. I just would have loved to see them land another starter for all the reasons I just relayed to each and every one of you. I get why they didn't do it. I get why they obviously are going to try to give the leash to the kids now, but I just hate the idea of, oh, we could have gave the kid a leash for a month and a half plus. We didn't do that, and now we're going to go ahead and give them a leash and on a start-by-start basis, potentially? Like, what are we doing here? You need to think about the roster, Wardy. Sproul McLean would have been pitching on the most, on most teams in MLB, but they aren't on our 40-man. That's why Stearns got 5 to 6 extra bullpen. Oh, no, 100%. I know completely why the Mets have their super bullpen. It's to do exactly this. Is to, one, allow them to consider the kids while having more bullpen stability. That's 1,000% true, and I'm glad that you brought that up. That is fair. While also bearing in mind that you have a rotation that's lacked length. That's why the Mets have such a higher quality bullpen now, too. They want to make sure that they have to utilize guys, say, starting the 4th, 5th, 6th inning. God forbid if a starter really gets rocked, that even then, your relievers that you're choosing to handle that length are more quality than they are quantity in just a name for the sake of being out there. Thoughts on Acuna not getting traded? Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised. Once the Luis Robert trade talk stopped, I didn't think Acuna was getting dealt. I told you guys all this in confidence. I firmly believe that Luis Angel Acuna was getting traded, with the exception that Luis Robert was a corresponding move. It's probably why Stearns didn't bring up the kids to pitch. Again, JTB, I don't give a shit about service time, okay? This is not the Will Ponzian regime. I understand the thought process. It doesn't mean I have to agree with it. I think that's the main difference, right? Like, you guys say that, oh, you know, I love every single thing that David Stearns does. I love a lot of things that David does. But when he's wrong, he's wrong. And when I personally disagree, I'm going to voice that personal disagreement. I don't see why we should care about club control of a player in a win-now stage. What we should care about is maximizing these potential player value with the club right now. If they don't work, okay, at least it wasn't for a lack of effort. Then you go out and potentially pay a premium for a starter if you don't have to give up a ton. If you could do it without giving up a ton, then you're putting yourself in good standing. If you have to give up a ton, then I understand why fans would have the outcry that they did. Have no fear, Blackburn is here. Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. And isn't it hilarious how a year removed from when the Mets acquired Paul Blackburn, we're still in the same status with Paul Blackburn. We really don't know the guy all that much. He's barely pitched for us, and he's a guy that the Mets now may have to rely on in certain settings here in the second half. Kind of crazy. Yeah, here we are. So, as a whole, getting back to the top, I'm giving the Mets a B grade out of any grade that I could possibly give them for how they did in this one. Bullpen's amazing. I love the bullpen. Bullpen is as good as any. I've never seen a Mets bullpen this good on paper in my entire lifetime. Like, that's a fact. I'm so excited to see how the boys will hopefully thrive with Helsley, Rogers, and obviously Gregory Soto. Soto looked great in his one outing. Then he looked bad in his next outing, but he looked bad in his next outing because he was being utilized in the 9th inning when that's never happening. Joe Ryan is staying put in the Twin Cities, coloring me shocked. All you guys that were saying Joe Ryan was going to the Red Sox, I don't know what you're smoking, but that must have been some good as well. Guys, David Stearns is going to be speaking to the media here in just a second, and I'm going to showcase that entire David Stearns presser with each and every one of you. We're going to listen, and we're going to live react to it in real time. And then from there, we're going to continue to break down what is happening here in Metsland. But I will probably cut things off for my replay viewers now, so this is a little under an hour. So everyone watching live, you guys stay here to our 1,400 concurrent viewers. Please don't go anywhere. I love you guys to death. We're going to watch the David Stearns presser together now in just a second, and we're going to live react to it and then go on from there. But everyone that watching a replay, let me know your biggest takeaway and thoughts to the Mets acquiring Cedric Mullins, the Mets, me giving them a B grade for their trade deadline here, and the pieces that the Mets gave up for Mullins. The only thing they have to say is, one, Anthony Nunez was having a very good year in the minor leagues. He will be missed. Mets have an abundance of arms, though, so they were able to sacrifice that. And secondly, Ramon Gomez, who I loved a lot, throws 104, has 80-plus stuff plus on his fastball. The guy is insane, but he has not been able to control anything yet. He's been a wild thing, and he's so far removed from the major league level. So that's why, in part, the Mets trade him. The Mets have confidence that they can build more flamethrowers like him in the farm, going from Hort St. Lucie all the way up. So those were like the key pieces that headlined that trade there for Cedric Mullins, everybody. But folks, now to all of our live viewers, let's continue on the live segment. Everyone that's watching replay, let me know your biggest takeaways in the comments down below. How do you feel? How would you grade the Mets trade deadline deadline. And I want to hear you guys in the live chat as well. Let me know your grades on the deadline, the live chat, and the comments down below, everybody. Hit that like and subscribe on your way out. Thank you kindly for doing so. Check out our Wardy Day tickets, as Wardy Day is tomorrow. So now is the final time to get yours today, should you guys have interest. Thank you guys all so much for that. But let's continue on now with our segment and get into this one. Let's go Mets, baby. Peace out.